This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze. Life is a maze. Don't kid yourself. Nobody is walking down the golden brick road to find the castle of life. And if you find that castle, when you get in there, there's probably going to be another maze once you reach it. It's normal. And it's normal to feel like I have nobody to talk to about these situations. Life is life. And if you believe everything you read in social media, you're not going to be a very happy person. At least I wasn't for a long time. I kept reading about everybody's great Christmases and Thanksgivings and birthdays and anniversaries. And I kept wondering, what is wrong with me? And didn't realize that I went into a deep depression. I didn't recognize it. My youngest son did. And when he told me, I was very angry with him. How dare you say that your mother is depressed? Look at all the things I do. And he said, that's exactly why you are depressed, because you're doing all these things for who? My guest today is Betsy Holmberg. I met her through podmatch.com, and I'm so grateful for Podmatch because I probably wouldn't have found Betsy out there, but her story, I feel, is my story as well as the story for many of you. So, Betsy, I'm going to have you jump on and take us on your journey so that we can maybe learn something from yours.
Oh, wonderful, Karen. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's start my journey with be I was so it's always been someone who wanted to do the right thing and get the good grades and get a good job. So I was very driven in that way. And part of that is I was very sensitive about, getting a partner. What would that look like? Childcare is big. And so I waited until I was 35 to get married. So super late and thought, okay, people who get married late, they tend to stay together longer. They tend to know who they are at that point. Like, okay, this is going to go good. I was like, I got this. And it was less than 2 years into my marriage, and I was deeply in love. My now ex was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And the thing that was so interesting in the moment is I read over and over in all of these books that, you like people just drop into their knees. They just like get, and I had that in that moment. Literally, my legs gave out. And I was like, oh, so when they're saying that, it's not just some literary thing. Like
Right.
this happens. Like you can drop and end up on the floor and really struggle to get up. So, and I had a 15 months old son. And so still needed tons of care, I was deep in that. And it was like, what's going to happen now? So fast forward through this divorce process, I found very challenging to kind of have your life ripped apart. And in the middle of it, I went on antidepressants. I had an incredible doctor that helped with that, and that helped a lot. And we can talk about the science of why. And my parents came close by. So I had that support system. So I got through, and that was great. But then 3 years later, everything's finalized, everything should be back to normal. And that's when the brain starts ticking, going, you should be healed. You should be done. It's been 3 years now. And it was interesting because I wasn't. So I kept trying to titrate off my antidepressant. And I felt this flood of thoughts come back of, you can't do this. You're not giving your son what he needs. This is too much for you. No one's going to like you. Everyone's going to think you're damaged, because you've been left. Why did you get left? They're all gossiping about you. I mean, it just flared, and I thought, uh-oh, can't do this. And so I went right back on, up my dose on my antidepressant and was like, okay, this is good. And I thought, like, no, I don't want to feel broken by this event for the rest of my life. And
Right.
that's truly how I felt. I felt like, okay, yes, I was, driven and doing all my stuff beforehand, but this thing really knocked me for the curb. And then now I'm stuck. And I thought, no, I refuse that. I refuse that for my son. So I knew what therapy would do because I am a therapist. And I had done a lot of those things too, PS, but I needed something more. And so what I did was went into the scientific literature to say, okay, if this thing's going to drive me that's nuts, where is it coming from? And like, what can I learn about it from that way? And when I started to understand from the neuroscience perspective what my inner critic was, that shifted everything for me. And I finally felt I could heal and not be broken for the first time in a really long time. And I'm a major introvert. I like my little life with my little dog. And so going out and doing books and doing podcasts is big for me, but this is really important. And so that's why I'm out there doing it.
You know, I love the word you used, your inner critic, because we all have one. Okay. A lot of us don't understand that's what's going on. Um, I shared on another podcast that my whole life, when I say my whole life, I'm 75. When I was 50, 55 years old, I was still believing I wanted to be somebody else. I wanted to have her hair, walk like her, everything. And my mind always went there. And I don't know who her was. It was just an image, but it wasn't me. But at the same time, everybody thought I was happy because I was doing for everybody. And that gave me joy. But when it didn't give me joy, I didn't understand. And then I felt badly about myself. And I kept hearing these voices. And I thought, am I going crazy? Am I, what is going on? And my son, who's on the autism spectrum, very high functioning, we were at a therapy session for him. And he said, you know, every once in a while, I get this image in my head of war. And that's what gives me my meltdowns. And I looked at him and I said, oh, like you hear things going on in your head? And he goes, yeah, didn't you know that, Mom? I said, no, we had never talked about it. So now I take over the therapy session and I say something to the therapist. The therapist said, Kieran, those thoughts are normal. Yeah, but you don't have to have all those thoughts. You have control. So she taught the two of us certain things we could do to have control over the thoughts. She said, now, they're never going to totally stop because it's part of your makeup. You're the one who brings those thoughts to mind. And it sounds like that's what you were doing, even though you kept thinking, I'm going to shut it down with medication, I'm going to use this tool and that tool. But until you found the right combination, they were going to be louder than the remedies.
Yes, what I would love to do is so your therapist said you are the one bringing those thoughts to mind. And I would like to tell her we've learned more. Like that's not the full story because it feels like it's all coming from us. It feels that this is who we are. These are my insecurities. This is my low self-esteem. This is my, yada, yada, yada. But that is not actually what it is. So we have two thought networks. Let's start with our first one, which is our most sophisticated. This sits on the outside of the brain, so it's the last one to evolve. And these are the thoughts you choose to have. So when you focus on reading a book, focus on this conversation, focus on your son, that is this central executive network.
Okay.
Then deeper into the brain, embedded more, closer to the amygdala and all those other fun areas, is the default mode network. And this network is automatic and it runs whenever the CEN is not. So you either choose to think something or you're listening to the default mode do its thing. And where it is embedded into the brain is much more akin to our hunter-gatherer days. And it served an incredible evolutionary purpose, which is to get us aware of others, want to work as a group, be part of the group, and mesh ourselves into it. Because if we didn't, we'd die. So it actually is a bit of a stress kind of part of the stress network in that capacity. Like it is trying to protect us. And it's automatic. It just runs and it talks at you. So these is not you creating these thoughts. Your inner critic is not your perception of the world. Your inner critic is this survival network that is yelling at you and comparing you to everyone else. So it loves to try to fit in. So that person looks better. I like that person's hair. I wish I was that. So I love your example. It's so what we all do, which is we take pieces of all these other people and we say, I wish I had her body. I wish I had her hair. I wish I had her family. I wish I had her house. I mean, that's what this network loves to do because it thinks if I could do that, I'll be safe. Or it likes to think about failing. I can't do this. I can't do my job. I can't take care of my kids. I mean, it loves to freak out about failing and it loves to worry, which I call fretting. So it's fitting in, failing, and fretting. And the worry is, am I going to get cancer? Am I going to have enough money when I am older? Like, am I going to be able to support myself? Am I going to die alone? Blah, blah, blah. It goes there. And so all of these negative thoughts, first of all, we all have them. We're stuck with this network, and it is yabbering at us, thinking that it's helping. It's thinking that, like, if it shows you all this stuff, that you can then shift your world so that you can make it better. But the second you then solve one of its issues, it's just going to go after another one. It's just going to see something else that's scary. So we look at the people with the perfect houses and the perfect families and all the money, and we're like, okay, they have to have the perfect lives. And then you realize they are just as kind of in their heads as we are. And it's because we all have this default mode. And where we get in trouble is believing that it's us thinking those thoughts instead of seeing it as this nauseating television that we need to ignore/shut off. That's the big aha.
I I love that because, you know, when I started coaching, the women I was coaching typically were moms of special needs kids. And we all had that same thing in common is deep down, we kept thinking that it was our fault. Okay. And I realized that I didn't think that until my mother accidentally made a comment. And she said, you had him when you were 40 years old. That is kind of late in life. And so I went and did some research. And back in the 90s, the research said, well, this could be. And I just, I took it upon myself. It was my fault. And once my son was fully diagnosed and we started working with therapists, one of the therapists said to both my husband and myself, I don't care if either one of you are on the spectrum. You might be undiagnosed. I don't care how old you were when you had your child. I don't care about any of that. Okay. That's not what we're here for. We're here to work with you and your son to be able to navigate forward. And I was so relieved, but it was still there. So every once in a while, when things weren't going right, or, if my mother said, why is he jumping up and down on the bed? Is it his autism? It'd be like, I felt the guilt again. But I finally realized when I started working with other mothers, if I had had those tools I really needed to understand exactly what the therapist told me, it wasn't my fault. And even if it was, it's not a fault. It happened. Okay. But so many of us don't know how to move forward. And you were stuck and didn't know how to move forward. And yet you were seeing patients and telling them how to move forward. How did that make you feel?
Yeah, so I actually had stepped back from doing patients at the time, so I didn't have any clients
Okay.
at that point. But to me, it is the human experience. We all get stuck. We all go down, and we all have to come back up again. And so just because, I mean, it's almost I personally am more interested in learning from the people that have been there than, and like if you tell me then you're in the middle of it too, even better. Like that you're in it right now trying to figure it out than someone who has supposedly figured it all out, because no one has figured it all out. And we get these things. I love you bringing up the mom conversation, because the DMN as a mom, it's such a unique profile, because not only do we blame ourselves for our children's behavior, whatever that looks like, but then we blame ourselves for not being the caregiver we feel that we should be. So if we get frustrated, or if we're exhausted, or if we cry, we beat ourselves up for that. And that has been part of my journey of being a mother, that I'm learning is that, our kids need our humanity. They need us to be full people that have all their emotions, doing all that stuff, because that then lets them have their, humanity.
Exactly.
Like that the more authentic we are with everyone, our kids especially, like, then the more included everyone is. And so I love that. I love that we are all in this together, and this is just what you're doing in your podcast, and that's probably why it's such a special place people love to come, because you're not judged here. We're all doing it.
Well, and and when you talk about judgment, it's interesting that I don't judge people directly. Sometimes I'll hear a story, and in my head for a while, I start thinking, well, they shouldn't be doing that, or they should be doing this. But then I catch myself realizing, no, they should be doing what they need to do. And I can let myself then sit back and say, okay, yes, I was being judgmental, but I now realize it's not up to me. And if I can't connect with them on this level, maybe I need to step back, whether
Mm.
it's my best friend, a family member, or even a client. In fact, I had a client a couple of weeks ago who was just going in a direction that I could not help her with. And she kept asking me to tell her what to do, tell me what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And I finally said, I'm going to refer you to somebody else because I'm feeling uncomfortable. Being able to use those words. And I said, and it's not you, okay? It's just the situation. We have to learn to communicate better. And I
Yes.
think that is a big downfall, especially for women, because we've been told to be that nurturer.
Totally. I'm the person that goes to the party and then for the next like 4 days thinks about everything I said and then wonders like, okay, was that weird? Did anyone think that was funny? Am I getting judged? Blah, blah, blah. And that is 100% our DMNs thinking it's like trying to like doing all of its research. Like, did I stay in the clan? Am I still in the clan? Do you think people still like me? This and that. And I think one of the liberating parts of understanding this new world is that I have a DMN, you have a DMN, we all have them, and they all find all the information, just like that little comment your mom said, of what does the clan care about? What's the most important? Like, what do you need to be doing? For some families, it's you need to be a doctor or a lawyer, and that's it, and then those children's DMNs will hold on to that forever and think, I'm a failure if I go into X, Y, or Z. Um, and so when we recognize that sometimes when our parents are doing that, so in the example of the lawyer doctor thing, their DMNs are saying the only way to be safe in this world is to be a lawyer or a doctor. And so it's one DMN talking to another DMN. And like this is where I love this podcast is it's ripping away kind of the DMNs of everyone to say, no, who are you really underneath it, underneath the fears, underneath the insecurities, aka underneath this neural network that we think is us, but is driving a lot, but we're literally listening to.
So, going back to the beginning of your story, you had an image of yourself that you wanted to be married, you wanted to have a family, you wanted that picket fence and the whole bit because that's the story we were told. as little girls. Um, and when you found your true love at 35, you figured this is this is going to be wonderful. And even though it wasn't wonderful and didn't last, there is learning experience from it that is positive. I went through a divorce 7 years into my marriage with a 4-year-old child in a brand new house, thinking, wow, we made it. Got a brand new house, we're furnishing it. I've got this, little boy who's going to be going to kindergarten. We are the perfect. Oh, and my ex-husband was a dentist. So it was like, I'm in the medical field. Um, but when we got divorced, my first image was, well, who am I? I'm not the wife of a dentist. And the first guy I went out with was not a professional. And I felt terrible. How can I date him? I'm supposed to be with a professional man. It's like, because I had heard that, I had heard those stories.
Yes.
And I have been in that situation. So how dare me take a step back and not be with a professional? And all those things really nagged at me for a very, very long time. But it was the day that my son, and this isn't my son from my first marriage, my son from my second marriage, he was 24 when he told me that I was depressed. I looked at him, and first just denied it. But when I thought about it, all those things from behind started bubbling up. What I did wrong as a 5-year-old, what I did wrong as a teenager, what I did wrong in all. And I just remember it was like I couldn't have done all that wrong and be here. We all need to come to that realization that all those things I went through, all the things that you went through, you needed to go through to be where you are today.
I I would not take it back for anything. I would not take it back and do something different because this first of all, it just felt right. So, I dating all through the dating, it was, wonderful guy, fabulous guy, but something in the back of my mind was like, nope, this isn't it. This isn't it. I don't know, some intuitive thing. And somehow with my ex, it was like, no, this is it. This is who I'm supposed to marry. I don't know what that feeling was. It was weird, but I there was so much that opened up my eyes to that my psychology training never did on how people can act, like what the dynamics are, what drives people. There's I wish my psychology training had taught me all of it, but it didn't. I needed that real life experience. And I am such a richer person, I feel like, for having learned all that, known all that. I feel better in my own skin. Is this to say that I am so much better than I was back then? Absolutely not. But do I feel more comfortable? Yes. And that's wild. And so did that must have, it was meant, I guess it was, I mean, I just hold it that like this was meant to happen. This was my journey and I'm living my journey and I'm going to keep going with my journey because isn't this interesting? And it's a lot of fun to chat with you. Like, and that's got us both here and like, and a source of connection that is so deep, and to have that with people is wonderful. So yeah, our journeys are interesting and sometimes the hard parts bring some beautiful pieces from it.
Absolutely. And when you're in that journey, okay, like I said in the beginning, it is a maze and you will get stuck at some time. And know that that's where you're supposed to be because when you're stuck, you have that opportunity to look behind you, to look in front of you, to look to the right, look to the left, or even yell for help. And that's something that I'm still not real good at. I broke my shoulder on Christmas Eve and I felt horrible because my son had come in from Texas where he was living at the time. He was going to be home for 10 days and he had all these things he wanted to do with us. And there I am. I can't move and I'm going to be scheduled for surgery and we don't know exactly when. And the whole time I'm thinking, what a terrible mom I am. I had this accident. I broke my shoulder. And it didn't take me more than maybe an hour or so to say, whoa, 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 whoa. You didn't fall on purpose. You didn't break your shoulder on purpose. And you needed to slow down because you were going faster than you needed to be going the last couple months. And I also recognized that my son, even though he had planned 10 days of activities for all of us, he needed a break. He had been working very, very hard. And so I turned it around and I finally said to him, you know what? I know this isn't the holiday that you wanted. That's okay. We'll make it up at some point. Take the time you need for yourself. Give me a little bit of help. Okay. And I said, and help me learn how to ask for the help. And he goes, well, what does that mean? And I said, if I don't ask for help and you hear me whining, I want you to come and confront me and say, stop your whining, use your voice. And he did, because I still didn't know how to ask my husband or him for anything. It was like I wanted to do it. So I didn't want to be in that maze at the time and be stuck. But it was the best thing because 2 months later, I went to visit him in his new place and we had the best 5 days together. We didn't do anything really, but we had time together. And so what happened in December had to happen for us to have such a good time when we got together in March. So when you're stuck, know there is something better in front of you, but you have to make it happen. Nobody's going to make it happen for you.
I love that idea of flowing with stuff when it happens and going with it. My mother always used to say, if you're stuck in traffic, maybe this is protecting you from getting in an accident if you had gone close. We never know what feels like a bad thing could honestly be a good thing if we had a broader picture. But since we don't have that picture, just being fully in whatever that moment is helpful. One other thing about being in that low point and being stuck that I found very inspiring was the functional connectivity. So these two networks are like muscles, and if the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And because they're either or networks, then if one gets very strong, the other gets weak. And so if the DMN gets very strong, the fMRI studies show that is linked to major depressive disorder, the major anxiety disorders, all of them. So they see in the brain the connection of how these brain areas are beefy or weak, and like how quickly they connect to each other, and our symptoms. So if you are deep in that, often people will feel like I can't ask for help. And I'm getting to your point on it's so hard to ask because they feel like it's a character fault in them. Like there's something wrong with me. I'm not worth it. How did I get into this place? No one wants to help me, blah, blah, blah. I mean, those are all DMN thoughts, guys. That DMN is like loving this moment. It has the spotlight. It's like done a filibuster like Cory Booker, and it's just like going on you, right? And that's the time that we need to say we do need help. And it's not because we're weak, but because our brain needs a physical therapist. Our brain needs to rebalance these neural networks, and it can be medication, it can be therapy, it can be connection with family. But having some help to rebalance that can be critically important. And so ask for the help. It's not weakness, it's physical therapy.
It's interesting you talk about the balance. When I was going through this deep depression, my husband just felt like he didn't know what to do. He talked to the doctor. He kept saying, well, she's still doing things, but I can just tell she's doing it in a fog. And he said, make her laugh. Well, my husband's a jokester, but he wasn't making me laugh. In fact, he was making me cry. It was like, he said, don't tell me that stupid joke. No, don't make fun of me about doing something that normally I would laugh about, but I'm not going to laugh now. So he made a choice that once a week he was going to take me to the comedy club. I could go kicking and screaming. I could go in there and cry if I wanted to. I could not if I didn't want to talk to him, but he was going to get me there. And the first time he took me, I was so angry. I was determined. I'm mad. I'm going to cry. I'm not going to be happy. I'm going to make everybody around me miserable. And I wasn't in there 5 minutes. And I felt like I was smiling. And I just felt the energy around me, which of course I wasn't getting at home or at work because I was still walking around, as he said, in this fog. But in there, all these strangers broke it up for me. And the comics came on, and I was belly laughing. I'm not even sure I understood half the things they were saying, but the energy around me with the laughter made me laugh. But the next week he wanted to take me. And again, I was like, I'm not going. He goes, you're going. And this took almost a month. And I finally said, can we afford to go once a week? I mean, it's not cheap to go to the comedy club. He said, it's cheaper than therapy. He said, because I see a change in you. And he did. I started realizing I needed to be energized around other people. The culture I was working in at work was killing me. And I didn't realize it. And I took a medical leave, and it was like, I was fine. I didn't need the medication I was taking. It's not that I stopped at cold turkey. So I'm going to tell anybody out there, if you're on medication, please, talk to your doctor, figure out your medication. And that's what I did. And they started weaning me off of it. However, I've gotten to a point where I've said, I'm going to stay where I am. I'm going to keep taking this because in some ways it's my crutch, but it does keep me chemically balanced. And that is important. So whatever that thing is that you can do that can make you break out, you got to find it or let somebody who knows you really well, like my husband did, find it for me. We went to the comedy club this weekend and I was in a sort of grouchy mood, but I knew going that it would all change as soon as I walked in the door. And it did.
I think humans are such interesting creatures. We're like that. I hate this analogy, but it's the analogy of the frog that's in the water and then doesn't get that the water's slowly boiling. And I think we're so wired to mesh to our clan and fit in and be whatever it is that we have a really hard time stepping back and saying, am I happy here? Like, am I happy working this hard? Am I happy with these people and the way they treat each other? That is a very hard place for us to go. It's like asking fish to talk about water. I mean, we have a hard time disconnecting from our clans and saying, is this like the right place for us? And it is so helpful to finally step back and be like, no, this isn't helpful for me. So in my book, so there's a book on all this called The Unkind Mind. And the most fun section of it is at the very end, where it's, well, who are we if we're not this voice, if we're not the one that's constantly trying to fit in and keep up with everyone else? Like, what do we care about? And where it's a bunch of exercises to go through to understand what those really authentic interests are. And it's such a beautiful example because your husband connected with one of yours, it sounds like, which is laughter, funny, like, being with others and in a laughing, humorous environment. And then that connects you, that gets you focused. And then the more we bring those pieces into our life in little ways, and this is not to say we all have to like move across the country and like
Right.
break up our whole lives. It's way simpler. Like I knew someone that in the process of doing all this that thought of her loves, and she's like, I love the ocean. I just love it. I love being at the ocean. I love walking. I always feel better when I leave it. And it was like, well, let's bring that into your life. So she changed out one of her pictures at work to an ocean picture. She started listening to ocean like music, like just the waves as she was working. And she started doing all of these things to make that just a little more in her life. And she's like, I feel better. Like this is good. And so, and it's beautiful. It's what you were talking about earlier too, that we're all different. We're all unique. And so our tools are going to look different. For some people, it's a comedy club. Other people, it's walking in nature. Other people, it's taking bathtubs and reading books. We don't know. You know, that is your personal equation of joy and authenticity. And what fun to try to, go out and discover it.
Absolutely. So how can we find your book?
So it's going to, so dropping June 1st, available Amazon, everywhere else that books are sold. It's audiobook or written. So however you like to consume your books, it's go for it. Yeah, so I'm really excited. It's coming out soon.
And are you also doing a podcast?
I'm doing podcasts like I'm doing with you right now. So I do not have a podcast. I write for Psychology Today, but that is not only on this topic. So if this is the topic of interest, really the book is where to go.
I love it. Well, Betsy, thank you. And I'm so glad we met through podmatch.com. I know you're going to have a lot more to say once the book is out. So I'm going to put you on my recall list because I'd love to have you come back, especially after I read the book. And we can talk about the book and the exercises and best of luck.
How wonderful. Can't wait. Let's do
Thank
it.
you, Betsy. Have a great day.
Great.
Bye bye
You
now.
too. Bye.